Hello everyone, and thank you for being here today, especially our judges, but also our wonderful audience members. We are from the University of Pennsylvania, and I'll start us off with introductions. My name is Brittany Kiesling, and I am a first-year MPA student at the Fels Institute of Government.
My name is Nate Bronstein. I got my master's in education from Penn, and I'm currently a dual MPA, MSSP student from the Fels Institute of Government in the School of Social Policy and Practice.
Hi everyone, my name is Rob Alterman. I'm a current first-year MPA student at the Fels Institute of Government.
Hi everyone, my name is Sahil Eshki. I'm a fifth-year PhD candidate in electrical and systems engineering.
Each of us has a background as a teacher, and through that experience, we've learned the importance of having the right resources in your classroom. Our idea at Schoogle is to create a mobile app that makes the inventory management of those resources more accurate and more efficient. This is important, and here's why.
Right now, there's a pretty massive discrepancy in Philadelphia schools between what's listed as a bought and paid for asset and what's actually present and available for children in classrooms trying to learn. We're not the first ones to notice this, nor are we the first ones to investigate it. In fact, one recent audit for simply 300 items in only 11 schools found that 62% of what was supposed to be there wasn't. Now, the assets we're talking about here, for the most part, are computers and technology, textbooks, and musical instruments. And this may not necessarily seem like the biggest problem, but when you consider the current financial state of the district, which is running a $60 million deficit this year and outlays $18 million per annum alone on textbooks, this becomes a pretty tremendous consideration.
And one that's getting national attention. The Atlantic wrote an article of how Philadelphia's inability to track their assets has resulted in students not getting the resources they need in the classroom. In fact, for Philadelphia, this issue has never had more attention than it does right now. This was the front page of the Philadelphia Inquirer 4 days ago. At least hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of assets, potentially millions of dollars, that had been forgotten were discovered in abandoned school buildings. The article refers to a city block of books and refers to not just the technology, but perfectly usable band equipment, including 5 fully functioning pianos that are not in the hands of the students that they were purchased for. When you don't track your assets, they get stolen, destroyed, and misplaced. It leads to tremendous waste. And then when you make purchases, you end up spending money on resources you may already have. Now, our objective is not to move these resources, it's to make sure they're never forgotten in the first place. And that's what took us to the Office of Procurement in the school district to find out just how bad this problem really is. And that's where we learned they don't know. In fact, according to them right now, it is virtually impossible to ascertain the extent of this problem. So, we went directly to the stakeholders.
We did. Baldy Middle and one of its largest feeders, Anne Frank Elementary, are unique for a handful of reasons. For their grade levels, these are amongst the largest schools in Philadelphia. They're also amongst the highest performing academically. And, more pertinent to our purposes here, these are the 2 schools that have most successfully implemented asset management strategies. This, however, was not always the case. When the current principal of Baldy first arrived, he found a $40,000 gap between what was supposed to be in his school and what actually was, and that's just looking at technology.
And if you consider that there are 218 schools in the district, you're actually looking at potential waste of up to $8.7 million in technology alone. Now, the school district has taken action on this.
They have. For both this loss prevention and also Title I compliance purposes, they've put serial numbers on all of their tech assets. And when this failed to have any material effect on loss prevention, they actually went through and embossed these asset numbers on these items at a cost of $13 apiece.
And speaking of sunk costs, in 2009, they used stimulus money to build a back-end database to track all of these assets. The problem? No principals are using it. And they explained to us that right now, the database is so labor-intensive and complicated, principals just don't have time to use this system. So let me actually show you how this process would work right now. If you were to use the school district's database, you'd find your asset number and your ISBN number, you'd log into the database, input those numbers along with other information fields, submit your asset, and then you can put in your next item. Now that doesn't sound too bad. Let me show you the database. This is our login page. You put in your email address. You say you want to submit an asset. Go to your school, go to the book menu so you can put in your room number, go back up to the book menu, put in your ISBN number, put in the signed subject area, type in your ISBN again, search for these items, fill out the following forms, and you've submitted one item. By the way, those images are taken from the manual on how to use the database. Now, when we talked to principals, their answer was simple. Wouldn't it be great if there was a way that I could scan these asset and ISBN numbers and automatically populate the back-end database? And that's why we're here. Schoogle is a mobile app that will scan ISBN and asset numbers, automatically populate the back-end database, streamlining this entire process. And the best part, this technology is already very widespread.
It is. It's widespread enough that it's probably in all of our pockets right now. Schoogle is predicated upon optical character recognition technology. It's the same mechanism that allows the Amazon app to scan a book title and search it instantaneously. It's the same mechanism that your ATMs use to convert numbers and names on a check into money in your account. All we're really proposing doing here is using mobile technology already in schools to scan asset numbers that are already embossed on critical items and populate them to a database the school district has already built and currently maintains.
So if we go back to this process before, we're essentially taking 5 steps, turning it into 3, cutting out the most time-intensive parts, saving you time, saving you money, gray hairs, and perhaps most importantly, giving the school district accurate information about what's actually there. Now, when we've talked to the school district about this, they've shown a lot of support. In fact, we've gotten support from across the district, most notably the individuals and the teams we would need to adapt their back-end system to our front-end app and then sustainably run Schoogle in the future. We've also gotten the eager support of both of these schools who have agreed to be our alpha testers.
In currying all of this support, we had 2 primary concerns. The first is that we might receive some really high-level pushback, and we were worried enough about this that we reached out to the School Reform Commission, which effectively functions as Philadelphia's version of a school board, and the teachers union, both of whom said that they wished us the best of luck, but it's contract negotiations, and this is just not the kind of thing that's really going to make their docket right now. Our second primary concern was building this program and building this app in a way that ensures principals actually use it and employ it the way it was meant to be. And rather than speculate as to how we might design an incentive structure for this, we just brought this concern directly to the principals themselves. And here's what they told us. Inventory management is not optional. If you want federal money via Title I coming into your school, you need to track what you spend it on. Additionally, there's a component of liability here. The current contract between the teachers union and the school district stipulates that principals must take charge on asset management and they must do it efficaciously. Which got us wondering, if it's mandatory, then what does this process really look like right now? It turns out this is a pen and paper process. Principals survey their schools for technology assets, they write down the serial numbers by hand, and they do this in a document that, as you would imagine, quickly becomes 300, 400, 500 pages long. This is time intensive, and this is not the good use of an educator's time. As you also might imagine, a document this long and a process this complicated tends to be pretty rife with inaccuracies. So Schoogle effectively saves a great deal of time and quite a bit of money by eliminating those inaccuracies and thus the waste and redundancy that currently comes with procurement. Time and money that's not spent on administrative tedium is time and money that you can spend on children. And to see this properly evidenced, we really need to look no further than Baldy itself. The savings they've realized from asset management have allowed them to build an arts program that is simply unrivaled in the school district of Philadelphia. These predominantly low-income children get to make giant 8-foot-tall papier-mâché dinosaurs. They get to make mosaics. The principal even found $5,000 in the budget to purchase a kiln so the children could take pottery classes.
And for all these benefits, cost of just the app itself is about $48,000, a number that we've determined from 2 estimates from consultants. Now, we expect this cost to be lower, as we've already also started working with a tech firm based out of Virginia. Other costs will include coordinating with the school district with teacher training, principal training, alpha and beta test, and ensuring that this process runs smoothly. But for this cost of $72,000, we've already also located 66 EdTech seed funding competitions to get the funds we need so that we can build the app this summer and launch our alpha test in fall 2015. Our plan then is to expand to about 20 schools in fall 2016 and the entire school district in fall 2017, with the potential to expand well beyond Philadelphia after that.
If this seems like a long implementation timeline, it's because it is. But we know from our experience as educators, as well as the conversations we've had with critical stakeholders, that if you want to affect change in a school district, you need to do it in accordance with the academic calendar. And we have a deep, vested, personal interest in affecting this change. We were teachers. These are my kindertots. I kept Doc McStuffin's Band-Aids for the little girl on the left when she fell on the playground. I taught her how to read and count to 100 and tie her shoes.
We're Team Schoogle. We're here for our students. Thank you for your time.
So if I may begin, I would like to compliment you on this project. I can see its application certainly in Philadelphia School District, but the school district everywhere. I'm personally familiar with the school district in Washington, D.C., with a profound problem of things missing and costing taxpayers literally millions of dollars, if not tens of millions of dollars. The other thing that I admire also about the project is the slow implementation. I think it would be an excellent idea to do gradual. And then once you have proved it, removed all the issues that may arise, and then make it a commercially viable project. The third thing I would say is that at a larger scale, we have seen the reports from the Defense Department with literally hundreds of billions of dollars of assets just lost, not accounted for. And something like this could be very well applicable there. The question, however, is that the stakeholders here, particularly the school board members, council members, and the people who really have to raise taxes to pay for all this, have you had any consultation with them? And what was their response if you had any consultation with them?
Thank you. That's a great question. So we've been in touch with the school district of Philadelphia, and we've talked to the chief information officer as well as the development team in terms of why Schoogle would work and why it would work for Philadelphia in particular. So number one is when we're developing this, there's other companies out there that do similar inventory management, but why we're different is because we are going to come to the school district and utilize what they already have with asset numbers already embossed on their technology, and we're going to do it at a cheap cost. And what we want to do is essentially give this to the school district and have it at no cost to them, so essentially saving them money, but then also allowing them to use the database that was already built in 2009 and making sure that it was already making sure that it's used, because again, they spent about $100,000 on building that database, and so we want to make sure that's not a sunk cost for the district and that they can utilize it properly.
No, what I meant to say, did you talk with the elected members of the school board and or council?
Go ahead.
Yeah. If I may take it. So we actually reached out to the SRC. So the SRC is essentially Philadelphia's school board. It's governed partly by the city, partly by the state. And they didn't have any objections to it. They were like, we have more important things on our docket right now. But more importantly, right now this issue is getting a lot of attention. So there have been 3 articles about it in the Philadelphia Inquirer right now. So we're not creating bad press. We're trying to help the school district moving forward to manage their assets so that these issues don't come up.
So did you discuss this with Philadelphia Inquirer, this project?
Yes, actually. We've been in communication with Mike Newell, who is the author of both the first article and actually the article that was released a few hours ago concerning this issue that's happening in Philadelphia. And then similarly, we've had this ongoing communication with the school board as well.
So go ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah, please.
The original spark for our idea was Meredith Broussard's article in The Atlantic. We've reached out to her. She was a very eager participant in our project. She's actually come on board as our faculty advisor.
So my first question is on policy recommendations that may have come from your research, and that is there a way where the procurement office does all of that asset management rather than the principal before that inventory even gets to the school? I mean, does it come into a central delivery location, and you can recommend that it all be scanned and all of that done before it gets to the school? First question.
I can speak to that really quickly.
Or any other policy recommendations that you are going to bring forward as a result of this project?
You know, centralizing it might actually potentially be advantageous, but at the moment, just the culture of Philadelphia Public Schools grants principals a pretty fair degree of autonomy. So when we were talking through the principals of Baldy and Anne Frank about how they procure assets for the most part, yes, they get their allotments from the district, but when they free up Title I funding, they can actually make a number of those purchases or recommend that the procurement office makes those purchases fairly directly. So no, the process is not as centralized as one might like it to be, and perhaps moving forward, that might be a recommendation we would make. Right now, the data to support that simply isn't collected, and that's one of the things that we are hoping to accomplish.
So you'll be helping collect that?
Well, we're going to be logging exactly what's in schools, how much of it, how long it's been there, and what condition it's in, and that's what's really missing right now.
Yeah, it seems like if you ask all those questions at the beginning and you know what you need to be tracking, then you can hand over policy recommendations, adding to the credibility of University of Pennsylvania and this team and this project over time. My second question is, how come another school district has not solved this yet? Is there another best practice or best practices across the country that you found, researched, or is this an independent project because you have a brilliant electrical engineer programmer there, PhD candidate, that you said, you know what, we're just going to clean slate, do this ourselves? Or are there other best practices?
So what we're doing is pretty custom to the school district. Yes, there are firms that emboss all assets with barcodes, but what we're doing is different. We're utilizing the database that was already built. It was built very thoroughly and in time. We're just building a front end for that database. So we're utilizing the effort and time that was built in creating that database, and we're essentially revitalizing that database. Yes and no is my answer. There's nothing that does exactly what we want to do, and I think that's where our value lies.
And so you did look at other school districts and what they...
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Actually, on that note, recently we got testimonials specifically from DC as well as Miami as two regions that are having very similar issues. We know that some regions also have hired those consultants to put in barcodes on everything else. And also, we're talking about the district. There's also charter organizations that are struggling with the same problem as well. I personally was one of the ones with the pen and paper in the dark closet in a North Philly charter school. So, yeah.
You have done some pretty extensive outreach already in terms of building relationships with the folks that need this and want to do this. But your budget also presupposes with and without school board support. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that might entail? Or is this with or without ability to interface with the pre-built system? Is that what that means?
Yes, absolutely. So what we have already gathered is support from the school district. So if we were to move forward with Schoogle, the number 72,000 would be with the school district support. The other number without the district support would be the idea of building a whole new database along with the application that goes with it. But since we've been talking with the school district, and if they're on board with this and we move forward, then it should only cost about $72,000.
The reason we wanted to show that comparison was really to emphasize how crucial the school district's involvement and support with this project has been. We are meeting with them later this week to continue to move forward, and you can see the vast difference of what we would have to consider if we didn't have the stakeholder buy-in.
But I guess the other thing I noted was that you say that when meeting with both the labor unions as well as with the Reform Commission, that neither body is interested in opposing your project since they're just not involved. I would think that they would be more enthusiastically supportive of your project.
School board.
Yeah, sure.
I think the big reason that they weren't so worried about it right now is because a lot of the press attention hadn't really blown up when the last time we talked to them. And much of this was from the last 14 days. And right now, they're really concerned with that $60 million deficit, trying to get that money from the state and move forward in a sustainable manner. So when the SRC, which is 5 people, 3 from the state, 2 from the city, is working on their, $250 million annual budget, it's hard to come to them with a $72,000 proposal. So I think they're really they want to see us succeed, but right now it's just not totally the best use of their time to come talk with us about this.
Have you thought, as you approach them, that you basically make this theirs? And so that they can turn the negative press around as one of the many steps that they're using or taking to solve their financial difficulties? I mean, do you care, as long as it gets done?
Absolutely. Absolutely, as in we would love to have their support and have it be sort of their own, something that they can own to launch. In the whole design of Schoogle, we've actually tried to specifically outlay space for sponsors and people who are in conjunction and collaborating with the project. If they were to say, we'll own this and launch it to turn this around, absolutely. That's our objective, is to solve this problem.
But we're also giving it to the school district for free, so it's at no outlay to them.
I'm just addressing the PR piece of it, which you've obviously thus far used to your advantage, and making other suggestions about how you can continue to do that.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
You've got a 5-year plan. Do you envision taking this to the marketplace? Do you see this as a viable business venture?
Absolutely. Right now, we're focused on developing and kind of iterating within the school district, first of all within our alpha test, beta test, to figure out essentially best practices, to hone our model. And once we've got it working, in the 4th and 5th years, hopefully, we have multiple ways of taking it. So one is to use the data that we have in terms of analyzing the effects of having material in schools on educational outcomes. One is to expand to charter schools, which are also in Philadelphia. And one is to expand to other school districts. I mean, for example, I think in 2008, there was some work in the Richmond School District. I think there was a report in the Chronicle that mentioned something on the order of 20,000 books at a cost of $450,000 lying unused, 70,000 usable books discarded, and $570,000 worth of books lost in 2 years. I mean, this is a general issue that we've seen across the board in school districts. Once we have our method figured out, once we have everything figured out in the Philadelphia context, we will definitely be looking at expanding.
So to Joette's question, if the school district of Philadelphia owns this, would they get the licensing revenues that would come if you take it to other school districts?
So if we, when we launch and we license it to the school district, that would sort of be their own animal. Ultimately, as we expand, it would sort of probably have to turn into different forms in order to cater to the different contexts of different communities. So that it's undetermined whether that'll translate as properly. I'm inclined to say probably not, but their system would be theirs in Philadelphia. So they will get everything they get from Schoogle here, and then as we expand, it'll be a sort of different animal.
But they wouldn't own Schoogle.
For Philadelphia, the initiative Schoogle, that would be theirs.
Be theirs.
Mm-hmm.
You may want to reconsider that
Yeah.
for 2 reasons. If you intend to take it to the marketplace, you need to own it. Secondly, you've already, with all due respects to Philadelphia, you've already attested to their incompetence, so giving it to them means that they haven't given the opportunity to mess it up again. So you might want to keep control of it.
I do want to I do want to say
That was me who said that, not you. So.
Right. Thank you for that. The school district has been extremely supportive of us through this process, and I also really want to emphasize there was tremendous staff turnover in the school district as well. So a lot of these issues that have arisen in this process, it isn't the fault of a single individual or a single group. It's this continual staff turnover and this perpetual issue that's occurring in the district. We hope that with this system, it'll provide that consistency as a catered user interface tool that's being run by the principals running the school themselves.
This will be the last question.
You, You mentioned that they were also buying about 18 million in textbooks a year. Is that the number correct, if I read that correctly?
For this year.
For this year?
That-
Okay. But, so it goes up and down a little bit,
Yes.
yeah.
Right.
But, you know, this is not a static system, and it's not that everything that they're purchasing will automatically have stuff embossed on it. How do you take care, and this gets back really to Julia's question about the centralized, as they do all this stuff coming in, how do you track the new stuff coming in and assign the asset numbers? I mean, that's not something an app is going to do, assign numbers.
So they're already actually doing this system for compliance purposes. So we showed you kind of the pictures of the stickers as well as the embossing. What we're just doing is using those embossed numbers. And to essentially play into that, so we're focused on essentially tracking new items. We're not focused on going into inventory and picking up stuff. There are huge issues of essentially who is in charge of things. So exchanges, which were our original idea, are pretty hard. We're looking at just tracking new inventory that's coming in, that's being embossed with tracking numbers using Schoogle.
One last point I want to add about that. The cool thing about optical character recognition is that it doesn't need the barcodes either. It can actually use ISBN numbers. It could use the barcodes. It actually can scan the front of the book. And it's already backlogged with both Amazon and the Library of Congress. So as these items come in, we already have a direct reference point to get that data into the system.